It started with a letter that looked harmless. White envelope, gold HOA logo, and the kind of official tone that makes your stomach drop before you even open it. Dear Mr. Collins, you are hereby fined $250 for violation of Community Pet Policy, 8A, excessive barking and public disturbance. I read it twice, then a third time. My dog, Daisy, a 12-year-old golden retriever with cloudy eyes and a limp, barely barked anymore. She spent most of her days sleeping under the maple tree in the front yard, dreaming her old dog dreams. There had to be some mistake. I walked straight to Frank Wheeler's house, the HOA president. He was the kind of guy who measured his grass with a ruler and waved at people just to remind them he was watching. His porch light was always on, like a warning. He opened the door with that smile he wore like a badge. "Well, if it isn't Tom Collins," he said. "You get our notice?" "Yeah," I replied, holding the letter out. "You know Daisy. She doesn't bark like that." "You've seen her." Frank tilted his head, pretending to think. "Got 3 complaints from neighbors. Rules are rules. I can't play favorites." "Who complained?" I asked. "That's confidential," he said, lips twitching in amusement. "If you've got a problem, you can take it up at the next board meeting." I wanted to say a lot more, but I didn't. I walked back home feeling the heat in my chest. I looked at Daisy sitting by the window, tail thumping lazily on the floor. I'd lost my wife 3 years ago. Daisy was what she left me, my last piece of her. And now this petty man wanted to take even that away? I paid the fine just to keep peace. But a week later, another letter arrived. Second notice, $500 fine for continued violation. No warning, no proof, just accusation. That night, Daisy started growling softly by the window. I stepped outside to check, and there it was. A chunk of raw meat lying on my lawn, glistening under the porch light. Something felt off. I picked it up carefully and then felt something sharp. Glass. Broken glass. Someone had thrown bait filled with glass onto my property. My throat went dry. My hands shook as I tossed it into a trash bag. I looked across the street. Frank's porch light was still on. He was standing there, just barely visible behind the curtain, watching. "Don't worry, girl," I whispered, stroking Daisy's fur. "I'm not letting anyone hurt you." That night I didn't sleep, because deep down I knew this wasn't about barking. It was personal. And if Frank Wheeler wanted a fight, he'd just found one. The next morning, I drove straight to the community office. The HOA secretary, Linda, looked up from her desk when I walked in. She was kind, mid-50s, and had been around long before Frank ever got his title. "Morning, Tom," she said softly. "Rough week?" I set the letters down on her desk. "Linda, tell me the truth. Who complained about Daisy?" Her smile faded. "I can't, Tom. Frank's been strict about confidentiality. Says he wants everything by the book." "His book," I muttered. She hesitated. "Look, between you and me, I don't think those complaints even came from neighbors. The forms were filled out by hand, but all the handwriting looked the same." My gut tightened. "You mean Frank wrote them himself?" She didn't answer, just looked at me in that way that said everything words couldn't. That night, I installed a small security camera on my porch. I wasn't looking for trouble. I just wanted to protect Daisy. 2 nights later, I got my proof. Around 11:40 p.m., my motion alert pinged. I checked the footage. There he was. Frank Wheeler, walking across my lawn holding something in a plastic bag. He stopped by Daisy's bowl, looked around, and dropped it in. The next morning, I called animal control. The officer tested the meat. Rat poison? I felt something inside me break, not in anger, but in disbelief. This man, this self-proclaimed guardian of community standards, was trying to kill my dog. I went back to the HOA office, video in hand. Linda gasped when she saw it. "Tom, you have to report this." "That's animal cruelty." "I will," I said quietly. "But first I want to see how far he'll go." That night, I went to the next HOA meeting. The room smelled like coffee and cheap air freshener. Frank was at the head of the table wearing that smug smile. He started his speech. "Residents, we must maintain order. Certain individuals believe they're above the rules." "That's rich," I cut in, my voice calm. "Speaking of rules, Frank, would you consider poisoning a neighbor's dog a violation?" The room went silent. Frank's face twitched. "Excuse me?" I walked to the front, plugged my phone into the projector, and hit play. The footage appeared on the wall. Frank, in his yard clothes, sneaking across my lawn in the dead of night. Gasps filled the room. Linda covered her mouth. One of the board members whispered, "Oh my God." Frank stammered, This is fabricated. You can't prove that's me." I stepped closer. "You're wearing the same jacket you're wearing right now." His face turned red. "You think you can ruin me with this?" I looked him dead in the eye. "No, Frank, you ruined yourself." And that's when I called the officer I'd spoken to earlier, who was already waiting outside. Frank Wheeler was arrested that night, but as satisfying as it was, the story wasn't over. Because when the dust settled, I discovered why he'd done it, and that truth hit harder than any fine or law ever could. The morning after Frank's arrest, the neighborhood felt different. For the first time in months, I opened my blinds without dread. Daisy wagged her tail at the sunlight like she could sense the air was lighter. But inside, I couldn't shake a question that kept gnawing at me. Why would a man go that far? A few days later, Linda called. "Tom, you might want to come by the office," she said. Her voice sounds heavy. When I arrived, she handed me a small folder, Frank Wheeler's HOA file. "Police asked for copies," she explained, "but you should see this." Inside were letters, ones he'd written but never sent. Angry, bitter words scrawled across yellowing paper. Most of them mentioned a dog. They never stopped barking. I told them to keep it quiet. Because of that dog, I lost everything. As I flipped through, I found an old photo clipped to one letter. Frank, years younger, standing with a woman and a golden retriever. My chest tightened. The dog looked just like Daisy. Linda said softly, "His wife passed away about 6 years ago." Their dog was all he had. A neighbor complained about it barking. The HOA fined him. He had to give the dog away before she died. I sat there staring at that photo, feeling my anger twist into something else, pity maybe, pain recognizing pain. He'd become the thing he hated, using the same rules that once broke him to hurt someone else. That night, as I sat on the porch with Daisy's head resting on my knee, I thought about how easily bitterness turns people cruel, how grief left to rot can make monsters out of the lonely. The next day, I went to the HOA board and said something that surprised even me. "I don't want to press further charges," I told them. "Let justice run its course, but I don't want revenge. I just want this neighborhood to do better, to be better." Frank was sentenced to community service and therapy for anger management. The HOA replaced him, and new policies were written to ensure fairness, including one I proposed myself. No fines without verified evidence. Months passed. Daisy got older, slower. Every evening, I'd sit with her under the maple tree, watching the sunset. One night, she rested her head on my lap and just drifted off, peaceful. I buried her beside that tree, with my wife's picture next to hers. As I stood there, I realized something. Sometimes, justice isn't about punishing the guilty. It's about healing what pain tried to destroy. Lesson: don't let bitterness make you cruel. Don't let pain turn you into what once hurt you. Sometimes standing up for what's right isn't about fighting. It's about forgiving and fixing what's broken. If you've ever been pushed down, lied about, or wronged, don't lose your kindness. Speak up, stand tall, but keep your heart. The world doesn't need more Franks. It needs more people who choose to be better, even when it hurts.